Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter, and
Sarah Sieg Avagnani.
with this week's Ascended World Collective Energy Share. On this, well, today here it's gloomy. It's a gloomy Memorial Day morning here.
Same here. Same here. Storms predicted, more rain.
Yeah, we have it's mostly cloudy, and I think maybe a thunderstorm later, but doesn't even matter. Just it is what it is. Right. It's just another day in paradise, as you said.
Right.
So, where are we starting today? There's a lot of edginess going on. A lot of edginess.
Yeah. Maybe we'll start with this. I had this realization yesterday that, oh gosh, let me see if I can find that thread. It was, since we come from a place of unconditional love for everything, that includes even the things that we believe we don't want. So in returning to that, which is what our goal has been, is to remember the unconditional love for everything, we pull everything in, or we remember everything. Let me see if I can remember how that all came about. But it's like, instead of wanting to remember that, wanting to have no judgment, unconditional love for everything, we just need to remember it, which we've talked about that. But when you look at your life, that's where the choices come in, because you already have unconditional love for everything, whether it's something you feel you desire or not.
Right.
So that gives the power to you in your choices. But until you acknowledge that you have unconditional love for things that even you think you don't want.
Right. Well, and that's acceptance, right?
Exactly.
But okay. To tie that into, give me the list again from your notes from our discussion.
Okay. All right. Let me get back to that.
I think I'm still floating from meditation this morning, so it's taking me a minute.
We talked about the collective ego and how we feel we're kind of in limbo.
Oh, right.
And then we feel like there's something that's just around the corner, but we're not quite sure what that looks like, feels like.
Right.
And we're impatient.
Yes.
That impatience.
Right. Okay, so let's start there, because that will tie in. I'm sure, because that's something that sort of came up for me last night as well, but there's some backtracking to do. Good morning, Gloria. So yes, there's been a lot of edginess going on. I've talked to, not just us, but there's been people that, I've talked to last week and whatever, that are like, okay, so now I'm sort of done with what the old 3D world was, and I'm waiting for what we're creating. And I feel like I'm in between, and I'm getting edgy and impatient, and I just want to move forward, and yada, yada, yada. Right. And I said, yeah, I can see that, because we're sort of in that breath, and it's sort of like the place of, we talked about several weeks ago about coming out of the cocoon, right? Getting ready to come out of the cocoon. Is it too early? But it's almost like we know the perfect moment, and each of us has a very different choice on what that is, and that's where the choices started to come in, right?
Right.
And so choice was a big topic last week. I ended up talking about it Thursday on my Living the Shift podcast. If y'all want to go and look at that, you can, because that'll give you a foundation to this, because it all builds on everything else. But, when I was talking about that in the middle of my podcast on Thursday, this is what we talked about, the collective thing, right? Because I suddenly felt in the middle of my podcast, good morning, Ann, a huge tsunami of resistance and irritation from the collective ego in a way that I had never faced it before. And it was weird, because I was in the middle of doing my podcast, and I was like, oh my God, I want to throw up, because that feels really gross. And yet I kept going. And afterward, I sort of let that, pan out. And I did a lot of work on all this last week, and it had to do with looking at the collective ego going, oh no, we love this
Exactly.
so much. What are
Right.
you doing trying to do this differently? Because we want to cycle around again. We want to do this again and again.
Right.
We want,
Right.
there's a
As
lot
much
of,
as we say we don't love this, we do.
I know. And
We,
it is our choice.
and the brighter we turn the light up, the deeper, darker the shadows get, which
Yes.
makes the experience so much richer.
Yes. Right. And so
more dramatic and more important seeming.
Right. And so the collective ego says, oh no, keep on turning that light up because I love the depths of the shadow that we're creating by doing that. In duality, that's what we do.
Right.
Instead of embracing the whole. And the more we embrace the whole and we realize that all choices are perfect because they're all played out in all ways because we have no limits, right?
Right.
That we can just let them all resolve and, move into a different state, which is what the collective ego came back and said, oh, wait, no, stop it. Stop that. I'm liking this.
I'm mastering this.
That's right. That's right.
So why would I want anything to be different?
Right. And then
I'm getting the hang of this. I'm figuring it out. So I've just learned the rules. So don't change them.
And what would I do?
Right.
If you change the whole game, right?
Right.
If we change the whole game.
Right.
And so that's the realization of looking at the whole, allowing us to allow ourselves to say, we love this game. And the perpetrators are us just as much as the victims, right? So it's like it all ends. And yet, those of us who have started to disconnect from that, right, consciously, that's where we're feeling edgy. Like, okay, yeah, I'm sort of tired. We've been playing Monopoly for 4 years now. I'm ready for a different game.
Right.
We've been playing Monopoly for 4,000 years or 400,000 years, and now I'm ready for a new game.
Right.
It's like, okay, how many times are we going to go around the board? How many times are we going to do this again? Oh, we're going to switch hands. We're going to switch who has power, who has more money, who has more blah, 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 blah. Right. Which is really
who has the utilities, who has the railroads.
Right. And that is a truly good analogy because it's really what we've been doing. Right.
Right.
So we're edgy because we're like, okay, we see getting beyond it. We understand getting beyond it. And yet there's still this pull of the habit, right, of the ego, individually and collectively, right? I mean, and it's challenging for us because this has been such a loud thing. And what I discovered over the weekend that I still held, well, not only just over the weekend, but last week, was this judgment that was very hidden, very skillfully hidden, of hurry up and get it already.
Right. Right.
How come like more aren't getting it yet? And that's a judgment. Like it was like this judgment of, and I'm going, well, there's still stuff I haven't remembered yet. That my higher self is like, when are you going to get this, right? So, so I had to sort of look at that, and then it really hit me hard this weekend. Yeah.
Right.
I had some really random crying fit that came in last night, and it was over something that was pretty minor, relatively minor. And then it just that's how I can always tell. It's like, oh, this must be all the stuff that I've been working on a week just finally came up in a big vomit, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I had similar experience yesterday afternoon, and I should have let it go more than I did. I guess I chewed on it all night and didn't sleep, but it was very much that, that realization that, again, I choose all of this, and there's a part of me that loves this.
Yeah.
And then the judgment comes creeping in about that. And, it's like,
why do I have this then? Why do I keep on having this? Because obviously it's an example of me wanting, right?
Having this evidence of wanting. Exactly.
So
coming to acknowledging that, and accepting that, to lose the judgment lets the whole thing then become a choice.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and the thing is, part of the impatience, let's go back to that for a minute. Part of that, wait, I just got this ping. Don't forget this point because it's important. Part of the impatience is we know there's something much, much bigger around the corner, like you said.
Right.
We know it, we feel it. It's like we felt this in December, November, whatever it was of last year. And we're going, God, this is so huge, right? And we were talking about, trusting beyond context and house arrest back in January, which was totally like, what are we talking about? Weird
Right.
voices.
House arrest. I
What a
guess
weird term.
we've explored that now.
Yes, we have. So did we create that, or was that a premonition of what we knew was being created? Doesn't matter.
Right.
So we know, or we feel that there's something really huge that's a bajillion times bigger than this. It's right around the corner. And this was basically practice to keep ourselves centered, to be able to be above the fray. And I think that's what I was mourning yesterday. I think that's what the tears and everything part of were, because I was like, if it's that whole attachment to the people we love, and it's like, if they can't get this, or if I can't get this,
Right.
or all of us, if we can't get this for something that's pretty relatively inane, I know people will balk at me saying that, but true, it is.
Right.
What's going to happen? That was almost like a mourning, right? Of, oh my God, then what's going to happen when this other thing comes around, which I still don't, we don't have any context for, right? And who knows what that is, right? So that was the whole like, oh, then I'll lose them, or I'll lose me, or I'll shut down, or like there's all this stuff.
I'll choose to go back.
Yeah.
I'll choose them over me.
Yes. Yeah. And I'll shut down, which is what I discovered last week, is part of my irritation that I've had for 2 months has been that I am at the point, this is how I explained it. This is how it came to me last week. This is a great way to talk about it. So as I was explaining this to a couple people, as through my life, I've always been an avid reader up until say like 4 or 5 years ago. My guidance was stop reading and just listen to your guidance. Right. And I do still read sometimes for pleasure when I'm guided, and it's always the message and that I need. But the thing is, I get to a point every time, and this is part of my biggest, funniest, sort of funny MO that I have, is that I get to a point in a story and I start getting irritated at this particular plot point, and I'll be like, yeah, no, I just want to skip past this. Let's skip past this and see to the point where it all resolves, because I don't want to, this is so annoying.
The details aren't important here.
Yeah. And yet it is. And so my guidance over the years have been, get your patience, take a breath, and plow through those pages instead of skipping, because I used to skip through them and just be like,
and then you sometimes have to go back.
Yes. Yeah. I have to go back. Right. And so same thing with movies or TV shows or whatever. I'll get to a certain plot point or whatever, and I'm just like, I just don't even want to watch this right now. It's so tiring. It just makes me blah, blah, blah. And so I realized last week, this is where I feel we are right now, is like, oh yeah, I don't have to go through this. No, don't like the details of this. It's very uncomfortable. I just want to fast forward. And I think a lot of us are feeling that under the surface in some way, shape, or form. And it's like, I know I committed to being here for this, and I know whatever, I know this is all building up to whatever, right? I know the energy of it. I know what it is. I just don't remember consciously, right? And yet every fiber of my being has been getting so much more antsy and going, do I really want to do this? Can't we just fast forward through this? Can't we just be done? Can't we? And then there's that point of you saying, like, what you're saying is right, except you chose this. This is the way you chose to do it.
Right. The way you chose to experience it.
And we chose this together, right?
Right.
And so that's been the frustration. And then I realized that for the past 2 months, I've been having a little bit of an internal temper tantrum. I shut down a lot of things. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to go out and do this or do this class or whatever. I literally wanted, which I did, and I was fine. Actually, it was a great cocoon, because I had to come to this realization so I could puke this up, resolve it, and get it over with. And say, okay, take a breath. And now I'm going to turn the page. and say, I'm okay with what's next. I'm okay with what's in this chapter. I'm okay with what
What's
is,
at the bottom of this page?
yeah, in the next paragraph.
Right.
And I'm going to be patient with it. I'm going to accept it. I'm going to know that it will pan off in the long run.
And without losing sight of, I still have choice within these pages.
Yes. Yes. Like there are those children's books that come out of the UK apparently, which I never, my kids were like, why didn't we ever have these? I'm like, I never knew about them until like now.
Right.
Where you make the choice and then it takes you different parts of the book, whatever.
Right.
And so, yeah, we talk about the choice thing. And so then it's like, okay, so if I chose this and I believe this to be the most fun, but I know that I've chosen all the other options too, so it doesn't matter, because it doesn't matter what I choose here. I'm choosing it everywhere, as all of us, as we're all one in the divine consciousness, right? So there is no not choosing. That's the thing to come to
Right.
a remember.
Well, not, what is it? That song says, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's a lot of discomfort right there, right? Because it's like, oh, because, then that's that feeling, I don't want to say anxious, anticipation, right? Of like, okay, so this is building up. Oh, blah, blah, I'm uncomfortable with this. Oh, and part of it has to do with the decisions we're still making, the judgments we're still making based on what's happened before.
Right. And choices made before.
Yeah. So we look at our spouse, our kids, our family, and we say, okay, hurry, catch up, don't make these choices, but that's still a judgment. Those are judgments of like, that I know your journey better than you, and I know how you're going to get there better than you. And that's the biggest thing for us to let go of.
Right.
And when I'm saying, oh, and what do? We start projecting, oh, because I know you and you've done this 5 times before in the past, and cycle back to the same place, and blah, 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 blah. And it's just going to happen again and again because you're just not breaking the pattern. And that's so much judgment just in that right there.
Yep.
And we do it all the time. And the ego thinks it's protecting us, right? By
Right.
anticipating based on history, right? We talk about, oh, history is the best lesson. Well, remembering is a great lesson, right? To pull the lessons out of what has happened in history to, hey, Kathy, to getting to the next thing.
Right.
But not to make our decisions based on it, right?
Right. Because circumstances are never identical.
Right. Right. Now, part of the discomfort is there's a lot of stuff going on. There's just so much chatter going on and so much projection and
Right.
Irritation on all levels going on worldwide right now.
Right.
And so
And the rumble and the collective polarity, just you can't ignore it anymore. It's not someone else's problem anymore. The attempt is to draw everyone into that polarity, and which creates yet again more polarity by not being pulled in.
right. Pulled in, not pulled in. So maybe, and the thing is, we're shifting so that we can see what it's like inside while you're still observing, right? But that's a huge shift from what we've done before, because either you're in or you're out.
Right.
It's the same thing of just observing the collective, knowing and feeling the collective, but yet still observing it without losing yourself to it, right?
Right. Which, some of this goes back to what we talked about, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, about how there's truth to both sides.
Oh,
so
yeah.
How do you even choose? So if you are just in that place of acceptance, you create that new stable footing almost that the polarities stem from, and it gives almost like I don't want to say a dead zone, but a neutral zone.
Mm-hmm.
that people can choose.
Yes. Yes. And it does all come in. So the thing to review the choice things. So these are big choice things that we're looking at, right? But the other thing to remember is that even if we're a victim, we choose to be the victim at some level, right?
Absolutely.
Even if
Absolutely.
we're the perpetrator, we choose to be the perpetrator. We choose to have the interaction. We choose to be helpless, or we choose to be in power in
Right.
every single thing that we do.
And that choice comes from a place of unconditional love for everything.
Yes.
And I think that that's a piece I was missing, was why would I choose this if I hate it? Because I ultimately don't hate it, because I have that unconditional love for everything.
Well, and you love to hate it, right? That's part of the experiment.
The richness. Right.
Yeah. And so that's the whole thing is, you're right. You know, it's funny. I didn't even really think of it in that way of like the way we keep on, oh yeah, the ego, collective ego going, oh, turn up that light. Yeah. Cause then that makes the depth of the darkness even deeper. Right.
Right.
And we want to see, wow, let's just look into that depth. Right. So that's why you have all this, you know, like play for control, for, you know, victimhood, for who's the victim, who's the perpetrator, you know, it's just who's right, who's wrong has become so extreme in so many cases, right?
Right.
You know, the shadow of what really has triggered me from the beginning, which you know, is the reflection of it being so similar to what Nazi Germany was like in the beginning of World War II.
Right.
And it's like many have forgotten that history, that it all started where the Nazis were all about unity and doing it for your community and let's do this together. Gloria says, especially if you continue to see yourself as a victim. To what statement?
I think there's a delay in
I know there's a delay, unfortunately.
So it's hard to bring that back.
But you know, so it's interesting because yeah, in the beginning of Nazi Germany, it was all about like do this for the community and we're in this together and all that kind of stuff. And well, does that sound familiar? Right? Except now we've created a palatable enemy, right? That isn't
because
a target at a person.
It's who could not be against a virus,
right? When the virus is us too, which we talked about.
Right.
So that's really what I think has irritated me under the surface through all of this. And it's funny because it's like from the beginning I saw that and I kept on, and I'm just like, you know, I got into a debate with my daughter who's a history major. And she's like, that's ridiculous. And you're really stretching. And I kept on putting out the points. And this was at the very beginning. She even hung up on me on the phone call when we had that discussion. That was 2 months ago. Different perspective, like 2 months later. And it's like,
right.
Yeah. So, you know, somebody else I was talking to said, yeah, I kept on looking at all these other like viruses and flus and, you know, diseases that we've had. And like, is there any pattern to something else we've had with all this and blah, blah. And there was nothing. And I said, yeah, because did you look at Nazi Germany? Because that's really where there was to look that had nothing to do with the virus. Change the face,
right?
Same energy, right?
Right.
And so, like, and I'm not saying this like to spur off any discussion, but the thing is, this is what triggered me because it was my perception.
Right.
And so, and you know, the honest, you know, the honest truth of it is, you know, I have memory of being a German soldier in World War II before this life. And that, you know, the thing that really triggered me, and it was like so much resolution that I thought I had gone through to accept that, but you know, died at the age of 20 in the middle of all that. But it was the guilt that I held of how could I be a party to that? Just even be a party to that.
Right.
But the thing was, it was a huge progressive shift to the collective. And it wasn't like one huge thing. It was a whole bunch of baby things. And then they got there. And then it's like, well, how do you get there? You just continue going, right? And I'm not excusing that or anything else. And that was the memory. But when this all first started and I woke up that morning and I'm just like sobbing, going, I will not be a party to this again, right? And everybody's like, what are you talking about? And I'm just like, yeah, I won't do this again because the energy is the same, right? So it's, and the thing is that was for me to resolve. That's the judgment, right? Instead of saying, I wanted to have that experience, right?
Right.
As much as I am repulsed by it, right? And I enjoyed the repulsion of it.
Right. Right.
Which makes your stomach turn a little bit, right?
Right. Well, and if you can rephrase it and make it a little bit more politically correct and say, I want to experience the contrast of this, contrasting, the opposite, the polar opposite of the way I like to believe that I am.
Right.
I'm the good person. I'm the light,
Right.
not the
Right.
dark.
Right. But it's like, oh no, if you're the light, you're the dark too.
Right. You're all of it.
Mm-hmm.
You're all of it. And, I think that it gets back to you can't have life without death. And, we were talking before we went live about how I drew the tower card today and you pulled Callie. And it's like,
oh, same energy.
That's that representation. And, I found a dead baby bunny in my yard again. And those always just trash me. But it's that same thing. It's like, without death, you can't have life.
Well, because the death is the birth. It's the same thing.
Right.
Which is really what Callie represents, right? And the tower is letting everything crumble to create.
Make new, build
right.
new.
Yes.
Right. Exactly.
So yeah, I thought that was hysterical that we both pulled basically the same energy card, different cards, but
right, different.
And I hadn't done cards at all for like a week, which is funny because I just like to do that, I just like to do that to see where I always say, okay, so what else is there for me to look at that I'm not seeing, right? And so then I usually pull it and then I'll go meditate on, like
what I find interesting is when I pull cards is they're typically just confirmation of guidance I'd already gotten.
Oh yeah. I love more times than not.
It's almost a game now. It's like, okay, let's see how close these cards come to what I already know.
Right.
Instead of the other way around. Tell me what I think I don't know.
Yeah. Or which is, all right, me telling me what I have yet to remember, or reminding me. Yeah. I find, I think the other one that I pulled was the thing. It was about alchemy to unity consciousness. It was a different card on a different deck, which I thought that was perfect too, because it's the same thing.
Right.
In the spiritual world, we have this code word now called alchemy that everybody uses, right?
Yep.
And what's alchemy but shifting something from one state to another? Birth,
right.
Death,
where everything already exists.
Yes, we're right. So, yeah, it's so important to recognize it is our choice. It was funny because I did say over the weekend, it was like over a meal, it was just another dead end conversation, arguing about, I'm not rolling my eyes.
No judgment there.
No judgment. No, but it was another dead end conversation, arguing about what's right, what's wrong, the mask thing and going out in public and da 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 da. And I just said, you know what, I'm done. And I just said that, and I didn't mean it with judgment, but I said, I'm just done having this conversation. So let's just talk about something else. Like, I'm just done with it. We've had it so many times, so, over the last several months with so many people. And it comes down to this. It is your choice. It is your choice for what you are to do. Because what is right for you and what is right for me based on our own individual journeys is going to be very different at any given time.
Right. And it should be.
Mm-hmm. That's the beauty of our individuality.
Exactly. Which is the whole point of separation.
Yes. So the thing that is really important to look at, and this is something that came to me in meditation the other day, to stay very aware of is this. Anytime somebody says, do this to keep you safe, do this to keep your relative safe, or do this to make other people feel safe, that's all ego, by the way.
Right.
No matter how spiritual the person is who's saying it, because I've seen it all over the place, right? And it's not, there's no judgment on that, but it's to be aware of that when we say do this to do this, to be safe. Do this. That's implying that I know better about your journey than you know about your own.
Right. Well, it's like the commercial that cracks me up the most is take this monthly injection so that you can get rid of the migraines so you can be at your kid's soccer game. So
Oh,
don't worry about what it's doing to your health and your immune
right.
system and everything else or your bank account.
See,
But being there, checking the box for that soccer game is more important.
well, so it's funny that you say the soccer game. The one that we saw a bajillion times is take that shot or take whatever that is so you don't have the migraine so that you can play pretend with your daughter every day and go out and make your fantasy castles and whatever, because that's all your worth is as a woman.
Right. Right.
Forget about anything you want to do.
Yeah, do it for others because you're not worthy.
Right. And that we have that so embedded. I mean, I know we laugh and that's
And we respond to that.
We do. We totally
because that comes from that place of as we've always said, it's just a few degrees separation of unworthiness, self-loathing.
Right. Yeah.
And we choose that too.
Yeah. And so it's funny because it's like, oh, well, like, and I see things like, oh, well, I don't wear a mask because I'm uncomfortable or scared, but I'm wearing it for you. And it's like, no, but that's still ego. Well, you're wearing it for you to appease somebody else so that they like you. Right. How about you just go out as unconditional love and just choose to go out as unconditional love. And if you're guided to do so with a mask, absolutely. And if you're guided to not do it without a mask, then that's fine too. Because it's whatever you're guided in that moment, right? So that's very, very tactical. But we're talking about also from a very large perspective. We have a lot of big choices to make right now.
Right. Absolutely. And it's from that. And, and how many times do we have to say it comes back to listening to that guidance?
Yeah.
If you can get to that place of losing the victimhood, understanding that you love it all, guidance gets so much more crystal clear because then everything, the choice is more recognizable. It's not like you're a victim to this or you're choosing to be a bad person. I mean, it's all about what resonates with who you are in your allness.
Right. Right. And it's not good or bad or right or wrong. And what you're guided now could be different in 10 minutes, could be different in 2 hours.
Right.
It doesn't have to be the same. And you say, oh, my guidance 2 weeks ago was this. It's like, well, but did you check in again? Right.
Especially since it doesn't appear to be working for you.
Right. So, and it's all little things. And that's why the practice is so, so important of that constant listening to guidance. And is this for me to do or this for me to be right now? Right.
And the acknowledgement that it's a choice.
Yeah. So like, for example, like, now it's like become like a criminal offense to hug people. It's just sort of nuts.
Right.
And I saw my hairdresser last week and I hugged her because I was so happy to get my hair cut. Right. And I said, is it okay for me to hug you? Because I've known her for years. I've known her forever. And she's like, oh, absolutely. But, as long as I just say, is it okay for you? Is it okay for you? Because you know what?
Right.
If I'm guided to hug somebody, I'm going to hug them as long as, they're okay with it.
Right. I saw an elementary school teacher had posted a predicted cafeteria seating chart for when school starts in the fall, assuming that it actually does. And they're giving each child a 7-foot radius in the cafeteria. So seating in the classroom and everything. And then it talked about the punishments for touching other children and I mean, what kind of children are we going to be?
Prison. It's prison.
Well, and it's a whole new level of what's bad.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just scary to think of the long-term implications of that choice.
Right. Well,
and I've seen a lot of people say,
ego, though, right? It's just
right. And I've heard a lot of people say that they would just continue with homeschooling.
Well, I think that's going to be a big wave now, right?
I agree.
Okay, so let's look at that for a minute, because from a bigger picture, the reality is our education system is way out of date. It doesn't attend to where children are today.
It really is.
It's antiquated and suffocating to most children because of the way they're coming in, and they've been coming in much more open and energetically conscious and everything else.
Well, and it teaches to one
Reality.
place.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
One place, not where children are.
Right.
It's like everyone must conform to this.
Versus every child is an individual. And we have more and more things like Montessori schools and Waldorf schools and all that kind of stuff, right? And so the thing is, look at what we've done. Look at the choice we've made to push an agenda, right? That irritates people so much that now they're choosing more so to say, you know what? I'm going to get my kid to where they need to be because I know my kid better than anybody else. And doing this is not going to attend to them. And if that's what we needed to push ourselves to do, great. You know, then it helps us to reform our education system. It helps us to look at the importance of individuality, because it's almost like forcing that opposite in duality, right? Forcing that prison environment, because that's really what it's like. I mean, I've seen a couple of people post things like that, and I'm like, it's like people being in prison. I worked with somebody in prison for 6 years. I know exactly the kind of thing. I'm like, well, this is exactly the kind of guidelines they get. Oh, you know, you can't do this, you can't touch, you can't hug, you can't da 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 da, right?
Right.
So, you know, Gloria says a whole new level of separation, but it's the thing is, it is pushing it from a perspective, from a facade. Remember we talked about facades last week, from a facade of deeper separation to push us into more unity.
Right.
Because at some point we say no.
Right. Our choice changes. Choice from being safe to being free.
Yeah. Well, and the reality is, you know, oh, we don't need to talk about that. Don't need to talk about that anymore.
Right.
Yeah. Anne says lots of grandchildren not around their grandparents due to them being over 60. Yeah, and it's like, you know what? I don't know. If I was 85 years old, I had grandkids that I wanted to see, I'd be like, I don't care.
Right.
Come on over.
Right. Oh yeah.
That's how I am.
Right.
So that's how I am.
Right.
You know. So and what are we saying? Oh, don't do that. And then we say, as you know, as a concerned citizen, right? Again,
responsible.
Nazi Germany, go back and look at the history, folks. That's how they started, with the unity. As a responsible citizen, you know, do this or don't do this. If you care about your neighbors, you know, we're in this together.
Right.
Instead of, how about, what does my guidance say? My guidance says, okay, yes, you can be with this person, then do it. And if your guidance says no, then don't.
Right.
So,
well, and you know, that's just the current circumstances. Looking at where you are now, you know, allowing things to have a positive impact in your life versus just becoming a victim to it.
Right.
Like, I know someone who had a knee replacement, and it's like, either have it be the best thing that happened to you, or it could be the worst thing, but the choice is yours.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And the choice and the choice to how we react in every situation is ours.
Right. And that's a minute to minute observation.
Yes, absolutely.
And that, I think that's the point that we were trying to make here. And that will lead us to the bigger picture of what's around the corner, because again, that'll be a choice. It could be the best thing, or you could be a victim to it.
Yeah. Right. And it doesn't matter how many people say something. It doesn't matter like what we talked about back in January. As a refresher to anybody who hasn't listened, and you can go back on ascendedworld.net to go see that. But part of the whole thing that we were really pushed about was really being able to create without context. And that is totally trusting in the now, right? So no matter what we're guided, and no matter what we're presented with, no matter what it might look like that the ego might judge as right or good or bad or wrong, right? to listen to guidance over everything else, because guidance will lead the way, even if we don't understand the bigger picture of what we're seeing in front of us. We got that back in January, and we talked about this in one of our Ascended Worlds. And so that's what's come to be. And this has really been a training exercise. And people want to say, what? Training exercise? Like, yeah, it's a training exercise to see if we can get there. Not to see, to force ourselves, to push ourselves to get there.
To practice.
To get in, you know, because as we have developed ourselves embodied here, the part of our consciousness that's embodied here, we have an easier time following through with a certain energy when we have repeatedly practiced it, right?
Right.
We believe that if we don't practice something, that we won't master it.
Right.
So we can change that too.
Yeah, so let's get out there and master that.
Just master it now, like that. So where are we going to focus today in our session here?
Remembering we love it all, and that brings us to the place of making informed choices.
Yeah, it feels like there's something else. I think it's me. So what I get is that's like a symptom of the core underneath what I can't quite get to what that is yet. What would that be? I feel it. I don't have words for it.
Part of me wants to say that the answer is buckle up, put your seatbelt on. You're in for a bumpy ride, but again, that'd be a choice.
That's a choice and a judgment.
Right. A lot of people like bumpy rides.
Is it a bumpy ride or is it a roller coaster ride and you're screaming and laughing hysterically, or are you crying? That's your choice too, right?
I always think of bumpy ride as that part from Harry Potter. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Right. And you know, we talk about this big thing or whatever that's coming around the corner. You know, it's so funny. We have so many people that just want to skip to the full awakening, right?
Right.
It's like, well, that's what we're in the middle of. We've been in the middle of it, and now we're ramping it up because we're taking it all to the next level. So this is like an overarching umbrella of the word awakening, which has been going on for decades. But don't miss the page or the chapter, because that will allow us to move on to the next book.
Yeah.
And so it comes back. That's what's coming. Let's see. Well, blah, blah, blah. We've only said this 3 million times about presence, right? Being present and acceptance and allowing one step at a time. In that comes that allowance of knowing that we love everything, even that we don't love. We love to hate. We love to project, right?
Right. We love suffering.
We love suffering. We love sadness. And sacrifice and all that kind of stuff. We love unworthiness. We love victimhood. So it's like, maybe it's a matter of being able to come to a place of acceptance, to say within myself with unconditional love, I love all of that.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you.
And from that place of acceptance of everything, this is where I like to focus.
Yes.
It's almost like an informed choice at that point.
Yes.
Because then it truly is what you'd like to see in that moment.
And that feels really good.
Yep. I heard somebody refer to that as the illuminated darkness. Because then everything, it takes away the light and the dark and it illuminates everything, which is different than being the light.
Right.
Everything's more on an equal playing field or equal choosing field. That feels good.
It does. And what comes to mind, to bring back the book analogy, is being the author.
Right. Which we are.
We're the author, the producer, and the actors.
Right.
the characters in the book or the
All
play,
the characters.
all of it, all of it, all of it. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've seen interviews with actors who have been had a lot of, like, say, dark roles or, you know, villain roles or whatever, who've said who in real life apparently were, like, you know, really nice people and, you know, like fun loving and everything else. And they're like, you know what? Those are my favorite roles because it really lets me explore that side to myself
Right.
that I don't explore in regular life.
Right.
So that's the illuminated darkness that you're talking about, is like, okay, so what if I just looked at that? And it's not, and look at how they're doing it. They're playing it out in a way that is safe, right? Because it's
Safe.
like, yeah.
Exactly. Right.
It's like what I've said about, you know, people have said to me over the years that they're surprised at that I've been in martial arts for so long, right? That I've like you know, and it's like, when I love it, love martial, love kung fu. We've been doing that now for 3 years, and we're in taekwondo for 7, and love kung fu because I love playing with weapons, and I love the fact that, and it came to me one day because there was like so many times that, like, I'd pick up a different weapon because we're changing weapons all the time, and stabs and swords and this and that and whatever, crazy stuff, blades, and there have been times I've picked it up and it felt so natural, like, oh, I know I've wielded this in another life,
Right.
right? And it felt so natural because just like, there are some that it just felt like it was just an extension of my arm, right?
Right.
And at some point I looked at that and it was like, yeah, and now you've chosen a way to play with that without having to take that, create that even deeper depth of darkness through the, you know, the slashing and killing and whatever, that this is just as an exercise and for fun
Right.
and in
Right.
play, right? Because I don't have any resistance to it, or I don't have any judgment of it,
Judgment
or
of it.
yeah.
Right.
So that's the same kind of thing. So what if we looked at everything going on in the world right now, right? Even the stuff that you're looking at and shaking your head and scratching your head and going, what the heck, right? Because it seems so crazy and out of context and blah, blah, blah. And say, huh, look at that part of me. Look
Right.
at, look at the possibility, the potentiality of how deep into the depths of darkness I can go with that part of me. Oh, isn't that
Right.
beautiful and amazing? What
Yeah,
a
it is.
change and energy that becomes.
Right.
And that actually, I can just feel that, like, blossoming in my heart. That's very cool. All right, so that's what we're going to do. Let's go ahead and do that. Whatever it is, like, I like that, the illumination of the darkness, right?
Right.
Embracing a self-responsibility, that we are the ones who choose and create all of this. B, that we do so with not just acceptance, but complete unconditional and grateful love of what
Right.
we've created and what we create. And that includes the illumination of the darkness, and looking at that and saying, look at how beautiful that suffering and pain and deprivation was, right? Which the
Right.
ego wants to balk at when I say that, right? Like, what?
Right.
And to say, well, how beautiful it is that we created that, to look at the bigger picture, look at the whole picture and the compliments of it.
Right.
And look at this person that I judged so much and so darkly, and look at how beautiful they are in terms of the color that they're adding to what I, you know, created as my
Exactly.
reality.
Right.
Thank you. And when you pull that resistance away, then it gives us that, yeah, that open playing field of the potential story that we can create in a different way. Because now we're whole again in remembrance.
Right.
Okay, so all that, nice little bow. All
Easy
right.
peasy.
Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Ready? Let's go.
Okay.
So anybody listening, just all you need to do is to close your eyes, take a deep breath, and be willing to receive as we connecting as a collective. Well, there was a lot of chattering in the beginning.
Right, right.
And then it was really nice at the end.
Almost seemed breathless there for a little bit.
What about this? What about this? What about this? Then
Right,
something
right.
shifted, and then it was like everything filled in. It was like everything filled in, for lack of a better explanation. And I could see everything fill in into all the cracks and crevices. It just made this beautiful whole, and it felt so just complete, so
Complete.
easy
Right.
and whole, and yeah, it felt really nice. I don't even have words for it because that doesn't even explain it. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but that's,
And I think every time you do it, every time we connect into this energy, it'll be different because it's ever evolving as you come
yes,
to new realizations and new
absolutely.
understandings.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, for everybody this week, stay in this. Come back to it.
Right. Right.
And every time you judge somebody or something or yourself or whatever, step back and appreciate it and be grateful for it. The more you judge it, the more you judge it, the more for you to do that, right?
Right. Right.
So, yeah, it's time.
Yeah, lots of opportunity there.
It is. It is. And stay tuned because Sarah and I are putting together a program.
That's right.
30 days to, we're not quite sure what it's called, 30 days to conscious choices, to better choices. We were saying better choices is very judgy. So,
Right. That's true. That's true.
so maybe 30 days to conscious choices, 30 days to conscious choices, and which will be stepping through not only guidance and whatever, but also living differently, living from a place of health and immunity and wholeness in a whole picture perspective versus just one area, which a lot of people are doing. Stay tuned. We'll be having more, hopefully by the end of this week, we'll have some more details out on that. And otherwise, we will see you next time. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avignoni.
on Ascended World. Have a good one.